All right, everybody. So we are back. It is 2:30. And so we're back with our second presenter, Kunjan Dayal from InnoBiz. And he's going to be talking to us about government contracting. Welcome, Kunjan.
Hi, good afternoon. So I noticed there are 15 participants. I hope all of you are from small business community. Before I begin, how many of you have you ever obtained a public contract work from an agency before? Okay, so there's at least one person who has not ever obtained a government agency public works contract. So we'll take it from that perspective, and I'll try and address items from somebody who has never done this work. For folks who have been doing this work, please be patient, or you can add in when an opportunity presents, because it is a complex and dynamic subject, and your input is very valuable. So today is December 8th, and this is just the schedule of events. So what am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about how to try and obtain small contracts from government agencies, small construction contracts. Construction is one of the contracting arenas which is heavily regulated. So knowing the rules is halfway to winning the game. If you know the rules, you'll know how to be a better player. So that's what we're going to attempt, is to understand the rules and see how you can make best use of it to your advantage. Okay, so to give you a quick exposure, the laws of Washington State are captured in RCWs, Revised Code of Washington. And these are the RCWs we are going to focus on. When you get the slides later on, these hyperlinks actually take you to the right place. So you can use the hyperlinks when you have your copy to delve a little deeper if you need to understand more than what I'm going to present today. Because yes, I'm going to present on salient issues, but some of you may want to dive deeper. But public works is defined in 3904. And then there's something called alternative public works, and that's 3910. In 3904, there are two chapters that cater to small contracts. One's called small work roster and limited public works. The other is not often seen as a small contract, but it often is, and I'll explain why later on when we get into it, is unit price contracts. And under alternative public works, we have job order contracting where you can obtain small contracts. So as I mentioned, I'm going to cover salient features of these RCWs. So let's take the one on small works and limited work, public work. So what is small work? It is defined as any construction work that is below 350,000. And limited is less than 50,000. So I know you have your levels of capacity to take on work, but this gives you an idea of where you can target. Now we'll go into deeper of each. So small work, how do you participate in small works? The value is 350. So you said, assuming that, yes, this is an area you want to play in. So the best place to start participating is item 2A on this slide. Get onto the roster. It doesn't cost you anything much other than membership that somebody might charge. I doubt it, but I think MRSC has a fee, which is the one I've cited. MRSC has more than 600 government agencies on its roster. So if they have a joining fee to support the infrastructure, you're well served because you get over 600 government agencies on their roster. This is not an MRSC presentation, but Tanya, could you click on, or Jessica, could you please click on the MRSC link and see if it can take us to this. So you can see it says MRC roster is used by 616 Washington public agencies on the lower right-hand side. And this is a great place to start your efforts to obtain small work projects. Back to our subject of obtaining small works contracts, that is the most, talk about going hunting, you can get some contracts surely through the MRSC page. Other agencies will have their own roster. Something more about a roster is an agency can have more than one roster. Usually they don't want to duplicate their work, but they may have a roster for different kinds of work. And I think at least the larger agencies like WashDOT, Sun Transit, perhaps Port of Seattle, they have more than one roster. So look up the roster and join the appropriate ones that suit your line of work. You can join a roster at any time. There is no timeline to join. However, the law does require them to publish the roster once a year with an invitation for contractors to join. But joining can be done anytime. So this is a very, the path to joining the roster is not difficult at all. It's just pretty administrative. As long as you have your paperwork together and you know which kind of work you want to do, this is a very easy path to success. Unfortunately, the RCW does not define how the bidding process will work. So each agency may establish its own. Of course, if they use MRSC, then MRSC has established its own method, and that's what you'll have to play with. But offers can be received by agencies via telephone, can be in writing or electronic quotations. So what is the competition requirement in small works? So for any project, an agency must get 5 contractors for small works. I used SW as an acronym there just for space purposes. It's not what people would normally use. And the minimum is 3 if it is limited public works. So again, the law requires agencies to obtain adequate competition, which opens the door for people to succeed. If you find that they're not getting 5, you can step up and say, hey, why aren't you including me? And I'll show you how they include 5 or 3. Then the RCW does require that the work be distributed equitably. So if you are on the roster and you're not getting opportunities to quote, it's an opportunity for you to call the procurement office and ask, why aren't you getting an opportunity to quote? Because the law requires an equitable distribution. Use the law to your advantage. Further, as the contract value goes up and exceeds 250K, then the agency must inform other contractors about their project. They're not required to advertise every work, but anything above 250K, they have to inform other contractors. So if you're on the roster and there's a work that's valued more than 250K, then you should be getting a notification, an opportunity to bid. And whether you win or not, quotations are available for inspection. So the agency must make the quotations available to you for inspection. It may help you fine-tune your quotation and bidding abilities. So I would encourage all of you to take advantage of these laws to get opportunities to submit an offer, to inspect quotations submitted by others. Whether you won or lost, you can still inspect. So if you won, you do want to know what the next low bid was and what was the high bid and etc. And if you were not the low bid, then you want to know who the low bid was. So the quotations are available for inspection and usually at no cost to you. So it's just a matter of sending a request. On the issue of bond and retainage, there's another small bit of advantage for small businesses. An agency can waive that requirement. If they're not waiving it, you can ask the question when you get the opportunity to submit a quotation. You can say, hey, why aren't you allowing us an opportunity to not have bonds or retainage? The law gives you the authority, and it'll be for the procurement office to explain to you why they're not going to waive it, or they might waive it. You might think waiving is not does not happen, but recently, I have started a small company of our own, and we asked an agency to waive some insurance requirements, and it got waived. I think we saved about $800 by getting that waiver. So it's an opportunity. You have to explore it. In limited public works, the competition is limited to micro and mini businesses. Who are micro and mini businesses? That the agencies have to define on their own. So you'll have to go, if you go to the MRSC webpage, it's probably defined there. But if you're trying to target other agencies, then you'll have to ask them that question. And if they have not done it, then you will remind them that, hey, this law requires you to give us opportunities for limited public works. And if you're doing that, please identify us as a micro or mini business. Another small administrative advantage is L&I allows combined intents and affidavit. It reduces your cost a little bit and perhaps administrative time. So we talked about small works and we talked about limited public works. The next opportunity, which many may have missed, is unit price contracts. Unit price contracts are used by many agencies, especially for work that is repetitive in nature. Some agencies may call it on-call contract because they have a unit price in place and then they just have to call the contractor to get the work done. I would encourage you to look at unit price contracts because you may find that there is not as much competition in this arena, mainly because of non-familiarity with the subject. I think the unit price contracts was recently underwent some changes at the legislature also, which makes it easier for many other agencies to use it as well. It was limited to some kinds of agencies, but in the last session, the legislature expanded its usage and allowed many other governments to use it. So what is a unit price contract? As the name defines it, an agency has repetitive work, say installing light poles. Then they would say, okay, cost for installing light poles. And you give a price. Anytime they need a light pole, I know I'm making it very basic, but you get the example. Then they have a fixed price and they say, okay, company A, go and do this. Unit price contracts have no cap on value. So a lot of work can flow through this route. Take advantage of it. It does have a short duration. And I think the legislature is trying to open the business to others by making the duration small. So it's one base year plus one option year. So they have to be competed quite frequently, and you should be able to get in. They have to award to one minority firm at least, or a women contractor at least. So if you belong to one of these classes of contractors, put your foot forward, you'll get the job. There's good news in this unit price contract regulations. The next two items are more administrative, but it affects your bidding prices. So prevailing wage is not done for each work, is done at the beginning of each contract year. And intents and affidavit must be submitted annually. You don't have to do it job-wise, you just do it annually. One item that the RCW doesn't cover about unit price contracts, it leaves room for agencies to define their own, is bonds and retainage requirements. But I'm pretty certain that if you find the bond and retainage requirement overburdensome, there is room for you to ask the procurement office to relax it, because there's no law requiring, say, 100% bond or retainage. So use these rules to your advantage, and you'll be successful in getting a contract. So we talked about unit price contracts, and there's something called job order contracts, and they are similar. Some may say they're not similar, but as I've been a procurement officer for a long time, I consider them to be identical. Because even in a job order contract, you get pre-priced unit pricing for various work. And maybe a little more granular than unit price contracts, but that's because the industry has been around for a long time and they become very good at it. So they can take on huge projects using job order contract. So again, going back to the laws, they have a cap in state of Washington of 4 million or 6 million, depending on agency type. So WashDOT has a higher threshold than others. And there's a cap on work order, 500,000. I've been a procurement officer for a long, long time. And one time I worked in Phoenix, and I have done millions. I've laid a light rail project using job order contracts. So other states are not as, don't have these limits, but it's good to know the limits. The limits are high. It's good enough for some solid work. The maximum work order of 500,000 is what occasionally comes in the way, but still it's a great opportunity to get some smaller contracts in place. Or small jobs in place. Again, in order to encourage competition, the RCW limits the term of the contract. The best news is it stipulates that whoever wins the contract must subcontract 90% of the work. So there are companies who specialize in job order contracting, and they usually get the awards. So for a small business, the opportunity arises with the last item in that list is the prime must subcontract 90% of the work. So get onto their list and you will get some work. Hopefully a lot of work, because a lot of work goes through job order contracts. The same RCW also covers other methods of contracting, and those also are usually in arenas where there's high subcontracting opportunities. So I thought I'd list it. So if you become good at job order contracts and you want to do other things, you can go to firms, primes, who have GCCM or design build project contracts, and they will be offloading a lot of work. So take advantage of those. literally every agency is using job order contract in the state of Washington now. If there are some who are not using, that's because they're using unit price contract or small works. But I doubt there's an agency that's not using at least one of these, because these are fast project execution tools. Using a job order contract, an agency can get some work done in, say, 3 months' time, compared to the traditional method of contracting, where it might take 3 months to just get the design in place. So these methods are good for the agency. They're very good for small businesses. And I hope you will take advantage of these opportunities. So how do you win small work contracts or small construction contracts? The best answer is networking. If you network, you come to know what work is happening, because yes, they're required to publish, but how many publications will you track? Yes, going to MRSC is a great opportunity, but people who are members of MRSC are also have the other problem of too many. So there's 600 plus agencies. That means a lot of work is flowing through that door. And which ones to bid for and which ones not to bid for can be a challenge. So networking helps you understand which areas you want to focus in. You get to know the people, and at the end of the day, people like to give contracts to folks who are known to them. They have an assurance of performance. Networking amongst your own community is important. Then you can partner up and bid on jobs that you could not do yourself. So number one always remains networking. The next is look for a foot in the door, which is get some sub work on major contracts. There's a lot of construction always happening in the state of Washington. I'm sure there's a lot of sub opportunities available. Take advantage of it. If you go to the procurement office of an agency that you want to work with, you should ask them, hey, what GCCM contracts do you have? Who's your job contractor? They probably have it on their webpage too. But find out about those companies and go and hunt them down and join them. Track agency notices for small works and limited public works. As you saw previously, they are obliged to publish these notices. So go ahead and track them. Join rosters. As I mentioned, MRSC is not the only roster. An agency can have more than one roster. So ask the procurement office, hey, what public work rosters do you have? And join the one that you want to join. Most of the time it is discipline based, but it could be geography based also. An agency like WashDOT or Sound Transit that covers a lot of geography may need a roster in different geographies also. So not just technical, but geography matters in roster. We talked about the next item too. You're allowed to review past bids. So ask for those. Update your company background. Every time you get a contract, add it to your list, and it'll multiply. You'll become successful. Item 7 actually are already covered in networking, so it's a full circle. We have come a full circle. Network, 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 and you will win contracts. If you don't have the skills yourself, collaborate with others who can complement your skills. Yay.
Okay, any questions for Kunjan about his presentation? Any comments?
If you don't have a question, if somebody has obtained such contracts, can you share your experience? How did you obtain it? How difficult or easy was it? Just share your experience with us.
Okay, go ahead, Ezekiel.
So, do you need to have a cage number? I've been trying to, I know, is that for government contracting or is that the same for this type of contracts?
Cage code is for federal contracting, not state.
Oh,
or-
okay.
Yep.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Commercial and government entity.
Ah,
It is the number that's assigned to your company after you register on the sam.gov website. Ezekiel, if you're having troubles with it, just contact PTACer, Daryl, I, or somebody on the website, and we can give you a hand working through the SAM process. There can be some weird glitches that happen, and we can give you a hand with that.
Mentioned earlier in the slide, you mentioned JOC and DBB. Can you elaborate on what that means?
okay. So DBB is an acronym for Design, Bid, Build. That's the traditional way of contracting. That's what most agencies have traditionally done. So design, bid, build is a sequential process where agency gets an architect to prepare the design, then they bid the design. So design, bid, and build, then they let the construction contract. In a job or a contract, it's like a miniature design build. So say the company says they establish a job or a contract, then a project comes along, they don't need the design. Then they can ask this job or a contractor to prepare the design. And because the design is being prepared by the same contractor that's going to execute the work, so the advantage is, typical advantages of a design build contract is you can begin work as the design is progressing. Job order contract bears close similarity to unit price contract because everything is unit price in that book. They have a price list book, UPB, unit price book, and every aspect of a construction work is priced in there. I don't think there is one that's not, that's missing. So regular civil work, every piece of work can be done from a job order contract. It does not require the design phase because the contractor is responsible for developing the design. And because of the cap of 500,000, this is not stated anywhere, but most of the work that's being done in the traditional sense, they would have to engage an engineer and get a design. It's a compulsion. In a design, in job contracting, they don't have to get a design, not a formal design. They can get a sketch and start working. So if you want to, modify a building, you can get the design. But if it's a small modification, as long as you got your paperwork in order for the permitting process, you don't need to update your design, and you can get the work done faster. So most agencies, I've worked at Sun Transit also and introduced job order contracting there. They take advantage of these because you can get a lot of maintenance type work done through job order contracting. It's fast delivery for the agency. It's one-stop shop. If there's good relationship between the job contractor and the agency, then work just flows fast. And the opportunity for small businesses is the law says the job contractor must subcontract 90% of the work. There's no such provision in design, bid, build. DBB has no requirement for subcontracting. JOC has a strong requirement for subcontracting. So that's your path to success. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Tamika with the Port of Seattle. I will say for our job program, in general, of course, the port, we have WIMBY aspirational goals, and then we also have DBE goals. So on some of our job contracts and procurements, we do actually have a DBE goal. And then of course, others, it's just the WIMBY aspirational. So that's something to note too.
That's added advantage. Not only the 90% subcontracting, there are goal requirements that job contractor has to fulfill. So
yeah, and we actually have when we put out our job contract, we usually have, of course, the prime, and then the prime will sub out the work. And right now, Centennial Contractors is our job prime. So if anyone is interested in job work for the port, Centennial is who you would be working with. You could, of course, communicate with myself or Tina, and we can put you in contact specifically with Centennial. And I will say this, in general for the job program, the Port of Seattle, we are planning to do a virtual meet and greet in January. We'll definitely forward the information to Lily and her team, as well as Daryl at PTAC. We are encouraging everyone to attend the virtual meet and greet because we're specifically looking at the small works, the JOC, as well as our port construction services procurements. And again, this is because we want to increase the number of women and minorities doing work on port projects. And we know that the JOC, as well as small works, is a good entryway into the port. And of course, getting some of that experience hands-on, and as well as the requirements are less. Again, maybe not as much bonding needed. And of course, if there is, Tanya and Lily's group can definitely help with that. So again, FYI, and we will get that information to you as soon as it's finalized, probably before Christmas. We'll have it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamika. Anybody on our participants on this virtual meeting today, has anybody actually worked on a job contract before or bid on a job contract?
We've worked on some contracts. Can you hear me? We've worked on some
Yep.
contracts with Centennial, and that was for the port on the noise remediation phase 1. And then we've done some job contract work with Sabre as well. And Centennial was our first encounter with the job contract, and it can get kind of you just have to know, like, I would say the one lesson we learned is the paperwork. You know, make sure that you have all your documents ready to go for them. And then we've got support from various sources as well. So that was a good experience. And we are continuing. They have also noise remediation phase 4. I believe Tamika's coming out or being rebid. And so we're trying to bid that as well.
Yes, you are correct.
So yeah, the experience was good. It was a good short project, a couple months, and it got our foot in the door with the port as well.
Well, congratulations, Mari. Good job on that. And you know, that's something I think that everybody needs to be aware of. JOC is a different type of contracting. You've got JOC contractors that are very experienced in doing that. I know Centennial's been around for a long time. So has Burton. Karen Say from Sabre, you know, definitely the paperwork is something that you need to understand. And then also with job contracting, depending on who you're talking to, you might, you know, you have to get out there and you've got to take a look at it because there isn't always a drawing to go along with it. Sometimes there isn't going to be a plan, but they're just going to tell you what it is that they need to do. It's a really quick thing. Anybody else interested in job contracting, small works contracts, you know, just learn as much as you can about it so that you know who you're working with on those. Okay, any other comments, Kunjan, or anything else that you want to be able to share with our participants?
And if folks are not able to make it on December 16th, these contractors are looking for subs all the time. So approach them anytime. Most of the time, the owner himself will respond to you because they are hungry for subs. Take advantage of it.
Bonding is really important. And if somebody, and Kunjan, thank you for putting that in your presentation about asking for bonding to be waived. Because sometimes insurance requirements, depending on what you're doing or what you're not doing, can be waived. And sometimes, bonding can be waived, like on small works, like you said. But I want you to approach it this way and think about it this way. To have bonding waived is a gift. It is not a way of life. Okay? It is a gift. It is not a way of life. Because as you continue to grow your company, you're not always going to be in a small works roster. As you build your expertise and your company continues to build and you go after larger and larger projects, you are going to need bonding. So it's better to start and find out what you can bond so you know what your contract limits are. And you can work within those limits, because it's when you know what those limits are, then you can start to stretch those limits. So if somebody says, I will bond you up to, $250,000 per project, your aggregate is $500,000. That means your single project that they will bond cannot be over 250,000. Or if it's like 275, you can ask and they might stretch it for you. Okay. But if your single is, your single project is $500,000, then your bond producer and your surety, they're going to have a long conversation about whether they're going to bond that or not. And then they'll come back to you and give you an answer. So you can have, let's say you have a $500 aggregate limit. That means you can bond up to 2 projects for $250,000, or you can have 5 $100,000 projects. Right? I mean, you just keep putting in for these different projects. But if you don't stretch those, if you don't stretch it, if you don't use it, then we cannot keep building it from 500 to 750, and then to 1 million, and then to $1.5 million, right? If you don't bond, we cannot help you to build it. The only other way that I can get you bonding, honestly, is you got a lot of cash. You got a lot of cash, you got a lot of assets. If that's the case, they'll bond you. They don't have a problem. Why? Because they know they can come back after your assets to take care of whatever they're putting up for your bond. Remember, a bond is not insurance, okay? A bond doesn't protect you. It protects who you're working for, that you will complete and that you will do what you say you're going to do as far as the scope of work. And if you don't, then they will hire somebody to come in and finish that project, and they will get paid, and they will come after your bond to pay them. And you have to pay all of that back. Okay, that's why they want assets. That's why they want all of these different things. But we can start building that bond out and just keep on going with that bond. Mari knows that. We've worked together on acquiring bond, and we need to continue to push so she can stretch her bond limits. They're doing the great job, but are they going to be able to take a $2 million job? Not without the bond, especially for what she does. Abatement is huge, bonding and insurance. So bonding, the waiving of bonding is a gift. Don't make it a way of life. Don't only try to work on jobs where everybody is waiving your bond. Okay, we have to go after the bond, and it doesn't cost you anything for us to help you fill out the bond application and to put it through. It's not going to cost you anything. The other thing is, if you are currently bonded, okay, if you are currently bonded, you have a right to protect your bond profile, which means if you're not being paid, you need to start talking to people about how it's going to affect your bonding, because your surety and your bond producer, they're going to look at that and they're going to say, look at this, unable to collect. I mean, they understand public contracting, how long it takes for public contracting to pay, but you've got to also protect your bond. It's like you have your own little credit with bonding, and people look at that and they compare that. What did you say? Will you be able to collect your money? Are you able to collect it on time? Okay, so your bond profile is what your surety looks at. How long does it take for you to collect your money? Is it 90 days? Is it over 120? Even if it's an agency. So what's the problem? If you're having a problem with paperwork, if you don't understand that, if you need help with that kind of things, like, understanding what are all of the requirements, call us so we can help you. We can go through the contract and we can get to that part where it says with every billing, numbers 1 through 10 are required. And then we can help you get that in order so that there is no hiccup on this, right? And the way you communicate, here's my invoice. Did you receive it? Is there anything wrong with it? Let me know. Mari, you want to say something? I can just see it crossing over your face. Go ahead.
Well, I would, if I could just share, initially when I first did that noise remediation, I couldn't even get bonded. And I don't know if you remember, Tanya, but at that time I had reached out to Lily. I was like, how do they expect us to grow our companies, our minority companies, if we can't even get bonding? And Lily reached out to Tanya, and I had a phone conversation with Tanya, and the same, and after, like, my company was prepared to do the work. We could do the work. We had the resources, the materials to do what we do, but we just needed an opportunity. And I reached out to Tanya, and then from there, she reached out to her network, and we made it happen. The same people who denied me, which is ironic, later came back and then bonded this project. And so I will say, from my experiences, if you have a need, don't be afraid to share that with this organization, with Tanya, with Lily. It's the reason our company has grown. We went from that to now we want to go into the government market, and we know that. And so we definitely need to increase our bonding capacity. And now in partnership with Hensel Phelps, we're negotiating, hey, now Hensel Phelps is actually going to help underwrite some of our bonding so that we can get to that higher level bonding, the millions that I want to be in order to go after government contracts. So building those relationships is crucial as you start to undergo these, undergo these job contracts. And initially the first bond, I think it was, Tanya, was like 37,000. It was for one portion. It was a smaller amount. You didn't even have to have a bond for that. They would have waived it, but she had told me from the very beginning, hey, you got to build your bonding capacity. And it starts with, start with one contract. And after that, we started building that up. And so that's the part that I want to share is don't just go for, if you want to get your foot in the door the first time, maybe get it waived, but start to build that.
Thank you for that, Mari. Yeah, Mari, thank you for that too, because you know what, you were a really good client. I know that it gets pretty harrowing when people keep saying no, 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 no. And the one thing is, I remember when Mari called me and she was frustrated, and we were both frustrated because we wanted her to get it. But I told her, I said, you know what? We don't care if they said no. A no just means that it's a yes waiting to happen. And so we eventually got the yes, and it was hilarious that it was the company that had turned you down. Yep. Thank you. Thank you for that, Lily. The other thing is too, because we have the relationship, not just with bond producers, but actually with sureties, the surety underwriters. We've been introduced to surety underwriters by our bond producers. And so a lot of times, we're on the phone with them. Our bond producer will call us and say, need help. They're kind of leaning towards a no. Well, how come? Well, because, they feel like they haven't been doing this long enough, or they don't feel like, it's enough. And so sometimes we know something about your company because we've been working with your company for a while, and we can call up that surety, with a bond producer on the phone. We'll have like a conference call and we'll say, oh, is that all they put on there? No, they've done this, they've done that, they've done this, they've done that. So what I realized about, especially when you're an owner wearing all the hats, is sometimes we're short on our communication. Like somebody will say, tell me what your most recent job is. And that's what you're going to give them. You may not think to pick the one that shows this is the amount for the amount that you're trying to go after. So let's say your most recent job was, 100,000, but what you're really trying to get in bonding is 500,000, and you completed a $500,000 job. So sometimes that's what we help with, right? It's just being able to sit through, talk about it with you and the bond producer, talk to the underwriter. And one of the things that I've always said to underwriters is, you issue bonds, and I get it that it's your job to sit at that desk and figure out what the risk is of this person failing or making it. And I get that your position right now is to just say no, to protect your company. And so for you to say yes, it's got to be something pretty extraordinary. You got to see something in this person. Well, how many people have you said yes to that come with all the technical assistance from a federal agency like USDOT? How many of those people have you said yes to that actually has that kind of backup from PTAC, from MBDA, from the SBDC, where they can get the kind of help that they need in case something should happen on the job? Does your other clients, do they have people that will go in and negotiate through something if there is a problem? No? Okay, well then that's kind of what we need to talk about. And I know with Mari's surety underwriters, I had been working with them for a while. And when I saw their name on the list, I just called him directly and didn't go through the bond producer. And I just called him and I said, well, what the hell, dude, you turned down this client. This is my client. And he goes, oh, it's your client? Oh, okay, well, let's talk about it. And so we started talking about that. And then we said, hey, this is how we're going to do this. Now, this is the client that receives assistance, but she's in a different region. And she's working with, with Lily. And so then they were like, oh, okay, so they come under the same program. Yes, they do. And he was like, oh, okay, well, we know the program. So see, sometimes that's what we have to talk about because they understand it because we've been working with them for a while. So yes, you can go to your own bond producer. You can certainly do that. But if you need the assistance, if you want us to make the introduction, the choice is still yours, who you want to use. But I will say, you don't want to use just a computer, just your computer when you're just looking for something online, okay? Because there just has to be a relationship there with your bond producer, because when you go to stretch that bond, you've got to have a live human being that has a heartbeat, that has blood and everything in their veins that you can actually talk to help you get through that process, okay? Just buying something online, that doesn't do it for you. And then nobody has any opportunity to get to know you. That's why, to me, it's important that we figure out who these people are so we can actually start talking to these people, start building the relationship. Mark, who did our bonding for, I think, A&E, he actually has been doing it for so long. He was living here in California. I know he covers Washington State. He's worked with us up there in Northwest. He's now back in Idaho working. But his relationship with surety is so strong. He actually underwrites in his own office. And I believe up to 3 million is what he can approve. So he can, as a bond producer, he can approve that. He is pinned by several sureties that he can go ahead and write for that without them even seeing it. And when he sends it in, they just approve it. But he can actually give you the bond right there in his office. So that's somebody we got to keep working with and understanding what he needs, how he needs your application to look, what you need to communicate, so that when he does the underwriting, it's an immediate thing for you. And that's the relationships, that's the kind of relationships we're looking for. The specialist, not somebody who does everything, including insurance. We're looking for just bond producers, and that's all they do. So anyway,
Yeah,
hello,
that's- yeah,
Annette.
that's-
You got any?
Is it possible to chime in? I'm sorry, I'm late.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was in another meeting. Sorry about that, but I just want to confirm what Lily was speaking of. Bonding is not easy. If it wasn't for Lily and the relationship that she had, when I first got introduced to bonding, I could not even get bonding, period. And, we all know about the 3 C's of bonding, the credit, the character, and the cash. And so I was working very hard into that. And it's because of Lily and the relationship that she had with the bonding agent that opened up the door for me. So I went from 0 bonding, not even being able to be qualified for bonding, to finally getting perhaps a $500,000 in bonding. And that was huge to get no bonding, because that is the one thing that keeps most of the small businesses out, is being able to bond these jobs. And you got to bond these jobs. And so now it has been roughly about 2 or 3 years, and we went from 0 bonding to almost up to 3 million in bonding. And that, again, it's from relationship, and to the point where I actually outgrew my initial bonding agent, thanks to Lily. So it's really true what she's saying. It's not easy. It is the one thing that will keep you from being able to grow is the inability to bond. So go with Lily and those relationships, because if Lily could not vouch for me, even though I've been in business for several years, you still need someone that knows you and someone that has that relationship with those bonding agencies. It's all about who knows who. And Lily can put that word in that can say, trust her, it's okay. She's been doing this for 20 years. The crash hit everybody, but the bonding agent doesn't know you. They don't know you. They're just saying, are you high risk, or, you know, do I want to roll the dice on you? So I can hear you talk, and I just want to make sure that Lily, anybody that has any doubt, I have walked this path and it has not been easy, but if you stay the course, you stay with Lily, you stay there and you keep trying, you will make it. And I am a witness. That's it.
Absolutely, Annette. Thank you for that testimonial. Wow, congratulations to go from 500,000 to 3 million. That is just phenomenal.
It's huge.
And that's huge growth for, for one of our businesses. And so, Annette, you are on your way. I mean, it's going to keep growing. It's going to keep growing, and you'll get to go after larger and larger projects. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And I know that you didn't grow that.
Congratulations.
Yep. I know you didn't grow that from 500,000 to 3 million, by being like, whimsical about what you're doing. You did it. You had to actually say, look, I'm going to do this. I'm going to complete this. And there were processes that you followed. And
Absolutely.
So kudos to you, Annette.
Thank you so much. Lots of work, but lots of help. That's why I sacrifice when Lily calls, I answer, because I wouldn't be here. I would not be here without her help. So, it's hard work. It's not easy, but we're not asking for handouts. We're just asking for opportunities. So if you're willing to put the work in, you can make it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the one thing too about Annette, and one thing too, Tanya, about Annette that I really admire, she's the most organized person in the world. I went to her office. She has everything. So, we could help, but you need to work too, right?
Right, absolutely.
So it's going to be both sides. So it's not just going to be us, trying to help, but you need to put and invest more as well. Like Annette's super organized. My bonding producer love her because like every time Annette wants something, or they need something, Annette just come with all this binder that is labeled. Everything is just so organized. Everybody's just like, oh my God. It's just, I helped her getting her 8A.
Absolutely.
Less than 6 months. Like it's super quick. She got awarded right away. Now she's in a journey to mentor prodigy with Sabre Construction.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Absolutely.
And, and the other thing is too, I'll tell you this, and this is from, from experience, is when you're that organized, like what Lily just said about Annette, when you put everything together and you come. I remember when I was helping to run WACA, Lily, remember we went after the STLP, right? Before we even knew we were going to get it, it went to DC and it went to the bank, like exact same package. We had the exact same package in our office. And so when USDOT sent down their representative, Graham Ralston, to meet with us, I came with our package and I said, this is what we submitted. Everything went out, FedEx, overnight delivery. DC probably got theirs and thought, wait a minute, we haven't even heard from the bank yet. It hasn't even been underwritten from the bank. And our whole thought process about that was, well, we're going to get approved. And so when we get approved, this is a faster way. And we got it in less than 30 days.
Wow.
And that was the process. And we had worked with Lily through that because we said, hey, what is the fastest way that we can get this done? And so there are ways to get things done if you are just prepared. But when the bank came back and had questions about what we had submitted, we responded immediately the same day. Like if it was in the middle of the, we are responding right away to all of their questions. We're not waiting to respond. And when you start doing that, it actually builds confidence. So Annette, when you go and you have everything organized, and when people say, wow, that wow is more than, hey, look at how organized you are. It's like, whoa, take a look at this. This is somebody I can trust. If somebody's this organized, they're paying attention to their money. They're paying attention to everything. And that's kind of what you want people to know about you.
You're absolutely
right?
correct. You're absolutely correct.
The DBE is like way down the line.
Correct.
You need to look at me as a person, as a business person first, that I'm about my business.
That is
And then
correct.
all these other things, they may be attributes that I possess, but they are not who I am. This is who I am. I'm a businesswoman, and this is what I do, and this is how I transact business. And that's the reputation that you really want.
You're absolutely correct. I agree with you.
So thank you for sharing that with us. Anybody else before we move on to our two presenters? Today we've got Vickie Scantarelli, who is going to be representing NAMAC, and we've also got Caleb McInvale, who is with OMWBE. They're going to talk to us this afternoon as, you know, providers of service as well. So anybody else want to talk to us about their experiences in either getting bonding or lines of credit? All right, well then let's go ahead and introduce Vickie Scantarelli. She is with NAMAC, and so we are happy to have Vickie here with us today. Welcome, welcome, Vickie.
Thank you. I'll do my name is Vickie Scantarelli, and I am the secretary of the organization we're going to talk about today. It's the National Association of Minority Contractors. We are the largest trade association that is controlled by minority businesses in the state of Washington. We are one of 21 chapters in the United States. So we have a national organization with 21 chapters scattered across the country. We were established in 2010. We are licensed as a 501c6, a nonprofit trade association. And our primary focus is to address the needs and concerns of minority contractors. Our membership is open to all people of any race and ethnic background. One of the themes that we have is building bridges and crossing barriers. So our focus is construction industry and how we can help minority contractors. This is just a picture of our current board. James Fison, who is next to our logo, is our current president. The gentleman underneath the state is Grover Johnson, who is one of the founders of the organization. We have Rose Medic, Irene Reyes, Young Sang Song is our vice president. Linda Womack is our treasurer, and then Jimmy Mata, who is not only a board member, but happens to be the mayor of Burien. So we're kind of feeling pretty special that one of our board members is a mayor. And what we've been focusing on this past year has been infrastructure and policy growth on behalf of our members. So what is it that we do, right? We have the who, what, when, where, and how. We do provide a forum for education and training. So sometimes in our meetings, we'll have mini training schedules or educational moments. We promote economic and legal interests. So we, in the past, have supported initiatives and policies and procedures that impact minority contractors. And we also advocate law and government actions within the constraints of being a trade association. We bring about a wider procurement and business opportunities. So we not only feature what's going on in government, but also in private sector opportunities. And what we are working on is the continuous with an equity lens, the continuous efforts to reduce and remove barriers to contractors in general, but specific to minority contractors. We have a forum for sharing information and mutual support, and I'll explain a little bit more about what we're doing with that. And we've been trying to work in building bridges between minority contractors, our members, and others, which includes corporations such as the prime contractors that you're familiar with and whose names I heard earlier today, as well as government agencies. And so we have a history of meeting the first Thursday of each month. We typically have our general meetings between 4 and 6 p.m. And we kick off our agenda with what we refer to as our WIMBY, our Women, Minority, and Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Circle. And this is an opportunity for us to come together and do a check-in. And this typically, in most meetings, will run about an hour of our time. It's a way of collaborating and sharing information and building relationships amongst ourselves, MBE to MBE, as well as others. We always have presentations about upcoming opportunities, any training or educational components that are available at the time, and also the opportunity for after hours or after meeting access. So one of the things is some of our corporate members, like right now, LIDIC has been doing specific one-on-ones with our members about opportunities on a variety of different projects. So even future work. The picture you see at the upper right, my right, might be your left. I'm not sure how the screen is looking. Keynote speaker and Regina Glenn, who we have our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Award named after. She was our first person that we awarded at our annual gala, and this was in 2019 before COVID. At our last event, which was a webinar, our keynote speaker was the governor himself a couple of days after he was reelected. And that was just about a month or so ago, in November, in fact. Our webinar meetings is what we typically do now until we can get back to our face-to-face. When we go back to our face-to-face, which is, I'm hoping, is sooner rather than later, we do a pre-networking and an after networking so folks can collaborate on future projects. Although we say the first Thursday of every month, if a special holiday happens to fall too close to that first Thursday, we might move that meeting to a different day so folks can spend time with their family and friends. So do check our calendar for that. And if you're not a member, I recognize some of the names in the gallery. So we have some of our members here today. But if you're interested in joining and becoming a member, I have our contact information, and I've forwarded this PowerPoint to you all so that you have something to walk away with. The email address to reach me, the secretary, is the admin email address. You can check out our website. We have a toll-free number and our mailing address. And basically, we have 3 categories of members. We have prime contractors in construction, and we have government agencies that are also members. And then we have our members who are our minority contractors and other contractors that are small business in there as well. We do have a category of affiliate members. These are individuals that are small, but not necessarily MBEs. And so we do encourage all kinds of folks to join us. So at that point, I turn it back to you, Tanya.
Okay, any questions for Vickie about NAMAC and about what they're doing there? Great organization. They've been in existence for a long time. Yeah. So I know if Vickie is over at NAMAC, I know that she's really committed, and I know that they are trying to move the dial there. Fully support NAMAC. Thank you for being here with us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And following Vickie's presentation, we've got Caleb McInvale from OMWBE.
We don't have a ton of time, so I'm going to move pretty quickly here. Just briefly, what I'm going to cover today is that, first of all, my name is Caleb McInvale. I work for the Office of Minority and Women's Business Enterprises. We're the official certification body for Washington State. So we do the DBE certification and the MBE or MWB certifications and WB certifications for Washington. I'm going to cover the basics of certification, sort of what the certification is, what it's for, I'm also going to briefly talk about the qualifications, so what someone needs to be in order to be eligible to be certified, and then talk a little bit about how the application process works as well. So first of all, what is certification? Our organization, we're part of the state government, and we certify small businesses that are owned by women and minorities. Also, business owners will come to us, provide us with information about their company, and we're going to verify that those companies meet the certification criteria, and then we can certify the business. So we have two primary types of certification that we offer. Those of you in the construction, that have been in the construction industry, particularly working with public agencies and selling to the government and the state government, might have heard of some of these before, but we have a federal certification, which is the, if you've heard of the DB certification, that's that certification. We provide it for Washington State, and that's for transportation projects in Washington that are funded by the US Department of Transportation. So examples of that can be construction projects at the port that might be funded by the Federal Aviation Administration, or other transit authorities there as well, but also highway project with WashDOT, public transit projects with Sound Transit as well, and even some ferries projects too. So it's going to be work with state organizations, like the ones I just mentioned, but it has money from the federal government. That's where that DBE certification will apply for those types of projects, mostly construction. But there's also a lot of related work that goes along with that as well. We also have a state certification, which is going to be your MBE, MWBE, and WBE. This is just a program of Washington State. It's quite a bit broader than the federal certification because it's for all different types of projects where you're working with the state. So that can be construction projects that are state funded, but a wide variety of other projects as well. And we have many companies that have both the state and the federal certification. You can get both at the same time by submitting one federal application. And it makes sense for a lot of construction companies if you might want to work on some projects which are federally funded, and then maybe also some projects which are state funded. You can get both of those certifications and move forward with that one application. And the criteria for those, which I'll discuss later, are nearly identical, so you don't need to worry. If you're eligible for one, you're likely eligible for the other one as well. So why do you want to get your business certified? Why does it help you? In a nutshell, it helps make your business more competitive. You still need to be able to do the work and you need to be successful, but being a certified business can give you a leg up when you want to work with the government specifically. On those federally funded transportation projects, that's that DBE projects where you have that DBE certification, have mandatory goals for participation for certified firms. What that means is that your business is incredibly competitive on those projects because the prime contractors that win those projects need to meet their goals. Otherwise, they could face monetary sanctions. They could lose money on the contract, or they could even lose their ability to contract with the government going forward if they do a bad enough job. So it makes those contractors actively seek construction companies for those federally funded projects that have the DBE certification. It makes you very, very competitive when compared to uncertified businesses on those projects. The same is also true for state projects. They're not mandatory goals, but there's a voluntary participation for certified businesses, and we work with state agencies to promote spending on businesses that we certify. So it also makes your company more competitive when you're working on those state-funded projects as well. Some private companies will also have supplier diversity goals they'll use our certifications for, but the primary purpose of these certifications is for working on government projects. A couple of other reasons to get certified with our organization is once all businesses get certified, they get placed on our directory of certified firms. So it's essentially very cheap advertising for your company. Contractors will be searching this directory in order to find your business, and it can greatly increase your visibility because lots of people will be looking specifically for your type of company, and they can see that you're certified. They know that you've been vetted by the state when you show up on this list. Companies with the state certification are also eligible for our linked deposit loan program, which can provide reduced interest rates on business loans for your company. Just for being certified, the state will help subsidize your and you can receive an up to 2% interest rate reduction as being part of the program. So
Caleb, I've got a question from one of our I've got a question from one of our participants.
Mhm.
So this question is coming from Ralph Ibarra. He's asking, if a firm is certified as an MBE for the state program, is there a fast track way to obtain DBE certification?
No, there's not. The MBE certification is the state certification, and we have control over that program because it's a Washington state program. The federal certification, the DBE, is run by the US Department of Transportation. There's no quick way, if you're not DBE certified already, to get that certification. There's no fast track. We can fast track it the other way around, where if you're already DBE and federally certified, we can make it easy to get the state program. But every single time a company gets the DBE certification, you have to follow the federal rules and use the entire federal application. So there's not a quick way to do that, sadly.
All right, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to jump back into this. What I'm going to be jumping into here is our certification qualifications. This is what businesses need to be in order to be eligible for certification. A lot of this is going to have some more nuance to it. I don't have time to discuss this in extreme detail, but this is sort of speaking generally here. So businesses to be certified have to be small. It's a pretty healthy limit there. So most businesses that are getting started or aren't quite large will fit underneath this small limit. Companies need to be licensed to do business in Washington and legally able to do their type of work. But other than that, there's no requirement for a business being in business for a certain amount of time. They could have started last week and they can get certified so long as they've done all the necessary steps to lawfully do their kind of work in Washington. Additionally, companies need to be able to independently perform their services. They need to show us that, yes, they can do the work that they say they can do. They don't necessarily need to show that they're the best at it in the industry, but they need to be able to show, yes, they have access to the necessary people and equipment to do that kind of work. So companies also need to be owned by women or minorities and owned at least 51% of the business. So the majority of the company needs to be owned by people who are eligible for the certification. Owners also need to control the company. So it's not just own it. They also need to make the decisions to run the company on a day-to-day basis. And also sort of as those major managerial decisions, they can't hire a general manager to come in and run the entire business for them while they sort of play a more backseat role. They need to be actively involved. Owners also must be what's called economically disadvantaged, which is a pretty complex analysis. But stated briefly, they need to have a personal net worth under $1.32 million, and generally speaking, income under $350,000. But for the average American, that's going to be, few people are going to easily be able to sit underneath that limit. So how does the application work? It's an all online application that you can access by clicking on a website there. You'll create an account on our website, and from the application, or a federal application, and as I mentioned before, if you want both certifications, you just start the federal application and you will get both certifications. We just run that process for you. There's a small fee associated with it, but for both certifications, but if you do want both the federal and the state at the same time, you only pay the one fee for the federal certification. And once you've submitted your application online, you get assigned to a certification analyst, and they will work through the process with you and ask you any update on the sort of follow-up questions if they might have them. And that's about it for right now. I want to put this contact information here, though, so if you do have any questions throughout the process, please feel free to contact our office. This phone number and a technical assistance email that are listed will get you directly to a certification analyst. That's the specialist that will be actually reviewing your application and making the decisions about whether a company is certified or not. And so that's a great resource. You can also contact me. My contact information is up there. I used to be a certification analyst, so I can answer any technical questions as well. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions?
Hey, Caleb, this is Marnie. I get the questions a lot. There's a lot of other letters on the certifications that you have on there, the CBE, the ACDBE, SBE. Can you speak to the less common ones that you see or have?
Sure. Yeah, they had a pretty compressed timeline, so I would bring them up in a longer format. But in those, we have the two primary buckets of certification, which is the federal certification, and then we have the state certification. Underneath the federal certification, there are three programs. There's the DBE, which is for federally funded construction projects around transportation for women and minority-owned businesses. There's the SBE, which is just a small business available to people of any race and gender. That's also specific for federally funded transportation projects. It's underneath the same rules as the DBE, except it's available to people of any race and gender. There's also a ACDBE, which is an airport concession disadvantaged business enterprise. That's a certification that's specific for businesses that operate inside the airport doing concession work. So that could be a retail business that sells to the traveling public, or someone that sells to that retail business. So like if you made cake pops and sold them at a Made in Washington store, that would be another way you could have access to that ACDB certification, but it's not as much in the construction side, it's more in the sort of retail and food service. So that's the certifications underneath the federal certification there. There's a number of individual certifications underneath the state certification, but they just speak to the demographics of the business owner. The benefits of the certification are the same, the criteria are the same. There's a different title based on who owns the majority of the business. So there's a minority business enterprise, or MBE, which is a minority male-owned business. There's an MWBE, which is a minority woman-owned business. There's a woman-owned business for non-minority women. There's a couple of special case certifications as well. One is a CBE, which is called Combination Business Enterprise. It's just a business that's equally shared with one minority person and one woman who's not a minority. So it can't really be a woman-owned business, and it can't really be a minority-owned business, but it's still eligible for certification. They're not as common just because it's really a 50-50 split situation only. And then the last one, which is kind of a mouthful, is the Socially and Economically Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, or SEDBE. That's a special case for individuals who aren't a woman or a minority, but have faced discrimination in the US. If they can show us that they've been discriminated against because of an objective characteristic about themselves, such as being disabled or being from a religious minority or something like that, we can still certify them underneath that certification type. The DBE certification also has the ability to make that individual showing, but there isn't a separate designation for it. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. I have one more question, and I've run into this one a couple of times. Mm-hmm. If a construction company wants to do site improvement for the retail stores at the airport, would that be a DBE that they'd go after versus the ACDBE?
I think that's not a question that we would deal with individually here. That's better a question for the port, because they're the ones who are actually making that determination rather than us. Because we certify the businesses, but how it works is then a certified business will go and work with these individual agencies, and they're the ones that determine when working with the U.S. Department of Transportation, what projects are businesses are actually meeting that goal on that specific project. So I can't say for certain there's a construction company airport. Tamika, could you answer that? I think you might know better than me on that one.
Hi, good afternoon. So it would depend on if there are federal funds or if it's just the airport doing that particular procurement. Most of the time, it would be the airport. Therefore, it would be a WIMBY aspirational goal. And we would ask, of course, for women and minority contractors. Again, 9 times out of 10, it would not be federally funded, if that helps.
But if it is federally funded for the site prep for a, let's say, a retail store, would that fall under DBE or ACDBE?
It would fall up under DBE for the construction part, and then depending on if the tenant would be ACDBE, then again, it could tie in. But 9 times out of 10, it would be the DBE for the actual work.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wasn't 100% sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. That came up a few years back, and I had a really hard time narrowing down the answer. So I'm glad I had both of you on at the same time.
Yeah, and a lot of times when it comes to the build outs actually at the airport, we do want ACDBEs and DBEs, but the build outs are usually not FAA funded, which is, again, why we have the WIMBY goal, but then we also put the ACDBE sometimes on there because we want the tenant, of course, to be ACDBE. And for some odd reason, if they happen to be, you know, a seller of a product and maybe for some odd reason construction too, then that's a win-win. But yeah, it's a little tricky when it comes to the build outs a lot of times.
Caleb, I have a question. Can a business receive the DBE and ACDBE with the one application?
Yes, they can. They can get both the DBE and the ACDBE at the same time. There's not many businesses where that would make sense because it has to be a business that could potentially be working on these construction projects and then also in an airport selling to the traveling public. So you can get both of them at the same time, but there's not a lot of businesses that do both things.
Yeah, I was thinking along the lines of, I've had some clients that are artists that could come up potentially. So how would they designate that then on their application, that they'd want both?
They submit the federal application, and one of the questions in the federal application is which certification type are you seeking? And there's a box they can check for DBE and there's a box they can check for ACDBE. They just check both. That's all it is.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
And I have certified businesses that have done that in the past. So it's definitely something we can do.
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody that participated today in our training. We appreciate you being here. And again, if you need any assistance or you have any needs, please either let Vickie know, I'm sorry, not Vickie, but Lily, myself, or Jessica know that you need that assistance, and we'll go ahead and schedule some time with you. I just wanted to say thank you to Vickie, thank you to Caleb for being here with us today. Also, Kunjan did a really great presentation for us, and Alan. So thank you so much for being here and joining us and taking time out of your day to support our participants in this virtual meeting.
And thank you everyone for definitely, like Tanya said, taking your time out. Ralph, thank you for that notice and compliment, appreciation. It's definitely an honor to know that we are doing something right. So I appreciate that, and we'll continue to work to strive and make sure that, again, we are inclusive and including not only just small businesses, but women and minorities. So that for me is a passion and a purpose. Again, if you have questions or concerns, please reach out to us. Again, we have contracting opportunities with the Port of Seattle. And again, we will have that Small Works JOC and Port Construction Services meet and greet next month. So I'll be sure to send that information to Lily and Tanya so they can get that to you all. And again, Caleb, I'll probably reach out to you, because if you are not DBE certified or if you're not MW certified, definitely do so. It's to your advantage. Because again, we really want you all to succeed. And as Caleb mentioned, some of these contracts and opportunities require the primes and the agency to have you. And it is to your advantage as well. So please take advantage of that. Thank you again, everyone, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tamika. Always good words coming from you and the support from the port. So thank you for that.
Yes, and I've actually been on both sides. I used to be the certification manager a number of years back before I went to Seattle Public Utilities. And then since then, I've gotten both my MWBE and DBE certifications. So I have actually been through the process. And I am pleased to say that it took less than 90 days for me to get certified. The hardest part of the certification process using the new format is really just making sure that I was organized and had access to the documentation to support how I started my business and what I was doing. That's right now the hardest part to do that. So the folks are wonderful in my interactions with the office, very helpful, very cooperative, very friendly. So it was a painless process.
All right. Well, thank you for that.
One thing.
Go ahead. No, go ahead,
teach
Caleb.
a online class on, well, where I will walk through the entire federal application from creating an account to, answering all the questions in there. So if anyone does have, Tanya and Lily can help, PTAC can help, but we can help too and walk through the application, answer questions on like, hey, what does this question mean? What do you mean by this document? And I'll go through a lot of the common areas we've seen people make mistakes or, just issues we typically see in the application so people can get it right the first time.
Okay, well, that sounds great. Caleb, please share that with us because we'll go ahead and make sure that our participants get that information. And then also, any clients that we're working with that are non-certified, if they are potential certified clients, we'll make sure that they get that information and hopefully they'll participate and be able to, get some information about going through that process. So thank you for that. Anybody else? Any parting words for us? Daryl, anything for the good of the order?
No, I think there were some great presentations today, as in every one of these events so far. Good information for our attendees. And yes, PTAC is here to help you through the certification process as well, if you want to take advantage of that. We can also help, of course, to get registered on some of these vendor roster registrations like MRSC, as well as registering with the Port of Seattle on the Vendor Connect system. So again, reach out to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.